This is Keith McDaniel, and today is September the 6th, 2024, and I am at the production studio here at Roane County High School, and I'm talking to Jody McLoud. Jody, thank you for taking time to come in and talk to me.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Sure. Now, this is for the Kingston Oral History Project, and it's just about you and your life in Kingston. So let's start at the very beginning. And, I imagine you were born here, weren't you?
Well, I was 2 years old when we moved here.
Oh, is that right?
My dad had already taken a job at Oak Ridge in the lab. He was a World War II vet.
Yeah.
And he took a job there in health physics. Mm-hmm. And we had lived in an apartment there in Oak Ridge until they could get their house built in Cherokee Hills, as you know where it is.
Sure.
So I was 2 when we moved here. So I consider myself a native.
Well, yeah.
I don't remember any place else to call home but Kingston, Tennessee. That's my home.
Well, I'd say you qualify as a native for sure since you moved here too. I was sketching another a lady for one of these the other day, and she says, well, I don't know why you'd want to interview me. She says, I grew up in Texas. I said, well, how long have you been? When did you move to Kingston? She said, 1972. And I said, well, I think that qualifies. So anyway, so your dad, he worked at Oak Ridge. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Now, do you have any older siblings?
Yes, I did. I have 2 older sisters, Judy and Carol. And when we moved here in '56, Judy was already school age and started in elementary school here. So counting my children through, there was a McLeod in the Roane County schools in the Kingston community from 1956 till 2003 when my daughter graduated.
Is that right? Wow. So y'all moved there in '56. I think that's when Mom and Dad moved into their house in that same year. It was the year before I was born. So yeah. But anyway, So what did your mom do? Was she a homemaker?
Homemaker.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so where did you go to elementary school?
I went to Cherokee Elementary. We walked to school.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have kindergarten. It was first grade through 6th grade. Yeah. Mr. Giles was the principal at that time.
Yes.
And tremendous educator and person.
Do you remember any particular teachers that you had in elementary school?
Oh, yes. I remember Mr. Engel, 5th grade teacher, and he would play football with us. He would quarterback for both teams outside when we would play our games outside. And just a great teacher. And I had a lot of great ones. I had Miss Trapp was my 1st grade teacher.
Right.
And
she was mine.
Yes. She was so I thought she did and looking back on it, and just, we just thought of her as family.
Sure, of course. I remember, I tell this story. The only 2 times I ever got spanked in school was from Miss Trapp. and one day, it was on the playground, and she took her shoe off and spanked me with it. Well, she didn't suffer fools very easily.
No, she didn't. In fact, one day walking to school, I don't know if you remember, there was a field we would walk through up there at the top of Willowbrook, cutting across to the school, and there was always a ditch. We called it a stream. It split right, and there was a big tree right in the middle of it, and we called that Treasure Island. But anyway, one day walking to school, I was dared as a 1st grader to jump across that stream, to see if I could do that. Yeah, I didn't make it. So I came in, and my pants were wet nearly to the knee. Yeah. And so, back then, if somebody had an accident as a 1st grader, if they wet their pants, and she had a pair of pants ready. Yeah. Because I was taller then than most of the kids in the class. So when my pants were wet, she said, you have to go in there and take those off and put these on. Well, I put them on, and of course, I was as skinny as a rail, but I was tall, and they came about halfway up my leg. And everybody knew that I had on the pea breeches. Yeah. So I tried my best to explain. They said, yeah, sure, you fell into the ditch. We know what happened. I still remember that today. That was traumatic.
Wow. So you, that was something that'll stick with you. That's for sure. So you went to Cherokee, and growing up in Cherokee Hills, I imagine you got involved in sports fairly early.
Yes.
So what was it like growing up in that kind of little community? Because it was different from the city kids. The kids that went to Kingston.
Yes, it was. It was a lot. Well, the whole community was made up of people that had moved in there about the same time because of the labs in Oak Ridge. Yeah. And so every family had at least a couple of kids. Yeah. And everybody looked out for each other. Mm-hmm. My mom, this was way before cell phones. My mom knew what I was into before I ever got home, and I'm not sure how it was, but we had eyes everywhere. Oh yeah. And if any parent decided to jerk a knot in you, it was okay. It was okay, and I, looking back, we lived and so did you. We lived in a magical time. Yeah, this place was fantastic. You think that the whole world is like that when you're a child. Mm-hmm. When you get up and you begin to see, you say, "Man, we had it made." It was one of the most magical times in the history of the country, but certainly in that community. And if you wanted to play a ball game, you didn't have to get an iPad. Fortunately, since we didn't have them, but there were enough kids for both teams. Oh, yeah, sure. Whatever the sport. Well, I remember, I tell folks, I remember when I was growing up there on Hillcrest and you lived on the street behind us, on our street, and it's a long street, but it's not super long. On our street, at one point, there was 100 kids under the age of 18 that lived just on our street. Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, so that whole community was full of school-age kids. Right. So there's plenty to do. Right. Yes. Plenty to do. Yes, it was a wonderful time. So how did you get involved in sports when you were young? Well, the first thing was my first love in sports was baseball. But then when I got older, I couldn't hit a curveball, so that's how I wound up playing football. Yeah. But and I played basketball some in middle school and stuff, but football was the sport. And my oldest sister, Judy, was in the band. Mm-hmm. So, of course, we came to every football game. Yeah. That's when I fell in love with football. Players like Bobby Abbott and Vic King and those guys playing during that day. And I would watch them as just a little kid. And I decided that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to participate in, and so by then I had caught the fever, and that led to one thing after another, and we were very fortunate to have a lot of great coaches and faculty, for that matter, at all the schools, and it just went from there, and led to the opportunity for me to get my school paid for at the University of Kentucky on a football scholarship, and was very appreciative of that. At the time, you do not realize all the blessings and all the contributions that were made by so many people when you're going through here. And I don't know if you remember when you were in high school, but we had an excellent English department here. All the departments were good. We had good teachers in every area, but it was when I got to UK, I was helping some of the other guys write their papers for the classes because I had learned it right here at Rome County High School, the English department we had then. There was Miss Wasson was here then. Miss Banker was senior English, and I had Miss O'Neill was one of my teachers in the English department, and it was just a very good experience all the way around, from the athletics to the school part and everything else. There's teachers that are still here today that work with Miss Wasson in their later teaching years. And I think when I was in high school, I think she had just kind of started. She'd just come here, and she was here for a long time. But I'll tell you, Miss Wasson is legendary. Yes, I mean the teachers still talk about her. Yes, she had made such an impact on kids. Yes, but I imagine. So you said you started in baseball. I imagine you grew up playing at Cherokee. Yes, at the baseball field. Cherokee baseball field where I played baseball. And like I say, I loved it. Who were some of the coaches that you had when you played baseball? Do you remember? The one that I remember most of all that had the biggest impact on me was Mr. Kerr. I don't remember Mr. Kerr. Bucky Kerr's his son. I know that name. But Mr. Kerr was probably the one that had the most impact on it, and of course, he was a little disappointed when even though I was through playing Little League, beyond Little League, that I went the football route instead of baseball. But he was a great guy. He was very instrumental on an impact on my life.
Yeah. Now, so once you finished Cherokee, you went to the junior high, I imagine.
Yes.
And people have a hard time. Young people have a hard time picturing what the junior high was like. I mean, it was probably condemned when we went there. It was an old building.
Yes, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, we called it the Alamo, It's what it looked like.
Yeah.
And the old wood floors, that they kept preserved with oil, probably if it had matched it, ever hit that, it would have gone up in minutes.
Oh, sure.
But, and the thing is, after I left Cherokee as a 6th grader, promoted to the big junior high, and
which was 7th and 8th grade.
7th and 8th grade, and it was packed. Just like you said, there were so many kids coming through at that time, and they didn't have room for all the students, so they put us first of all for a little while at a place at Cherokee because they had just they were building on and had some more, and we were there for a little bit, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, I'm getting demoted back to elementary, liking that. And we actually spent the first half of the year as a self-contained class in the Masonic Lodge.
Is that right?
Yeah,
just across the street.
Yes.
Yeah,
and because there was no room, and so I remember that you're talking about the number of kids. It was exploding at that time.
Sure,
but then. I remember one time Miss Hobgood.
She was the principal at the junior high.
Yes,
yeah.
And I don't remember what I was into or doing, but she jerked me up, whipped me all the way to the office, and then I got an official whipping. Whatever it was I was doing, I made sure I didn't do that anymore.
She was the warden, wasn't she?
She was. And it took somebody like that then.
Yeah.
She kept us in line. I remember hearing the story about. This was a few years before me. It wasn't her that was involved, but one of the teachers. But it was Hugh Melvin,
right?
And had Chuck King in his class. And you know how the windows were just a few feet from the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the PE kids would come by. Of course, remember, they wore uniforms then, and the girls were walking by right where the window where Chuck was, and he was leaning out the window, back this way, and. Coach had told him a couple of times to turn around, and he would lean out. He's talking to all the girls, leaning over the windowsill. And then, so Coach had told him 2 or 3 times. So he picked up a half-deflated volleyball from his desk and threw it, hit Chuck right in the back of the head, which knocked his chin on that windowsill and knocked him out.
Oh, my goodness.
He came to and everything was fine.
Yeah.
I can imagine what that would be like today if that were
Boy, isn't that the truth? You'd be under the jail if you did that today, wouldn't you?
But you talk about a beloved person, that Hugh Melvin Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
As a teacher and a coach, and heart as big as Texas.
Now, did you play basketball in junior high?
Yeah, I played in junior high, and Wayne Everett was the coach.
Is that right?
When I played there at junior high. And did a great job, and I still think the world of him and his wife Judith, for that matter. Yeah.
Did you play basketball in high school?
No.
Okay, you just played football.
I was by then sold out completely, everything to football, and I would advise kids though to not specialize like that.
Yeah,
I think it's best every sport that they've got the ability to play at least through high school, that they play them all, and any that they're interested in. Because they all develop skills for the other. There are things you can learn in any one of the sports that carries over to the other sport.
Right.
So I would advise everybody to participate in any, but I was so in love with football that was all I wanted to devote my time to.
Now, you got one younger brother. Do you have more than one?
Yeah, I got 2 younger brothers.
Okay, right.
Tony.
Yeah, Tony.
Was 3 years behind me, and
who I graduated with.
Right. And Kevin was about 11 years behind.
Okay.
I was 11 when he was born. He was the late surprise.
Right.
That made 5 of us. But and he, Tony drove truck for Everett for years. He's retired now and lives in the Carnes community in Knoxville. Yeah. There, he and his wife, and Kevin lives in Nashville. Works in the offices of the United Methodist church organization there with their. He was in the literature and the production of their literature for years.
Now, speaking of church, did y'all grow up in church?
Yes, we went to First Baptist. I was baptized at First Baptist when I was 9 years old, and attended there for years and years. And then, of course, went off to school and came back. And that's where we went. In fact, your mom and Dad, everybody went there then. And I got to tell this story since you brought it about your mom. When she was getting close to the end, and she was at Jamestown?
She was at Jamestown.
And I went to visit her. I was working at First Baptist then. Went to visit her, and she was ready to go home.
She was.
And she was, missing your dad, and she could tell it was close.
Yeah.
And so we had a talk, just an enjoyable talk. She had a demeanor of just authority. She was great with numbers. I know she probably did a lot of people's taxes.
She did.
But had a great conversation with her, and I said, "Can I pray for you before I leave?" She said, "Yes, you can pray for me, but don't you pray me out of heaven." She didn't want us. Don't pray for me to hang around here. I'm ready to go home.
That's exactly what she told us the last few weeks, actually. So
that's very comforting.
She was ready to go. I remember, and you preached her funeral. I remember what you said. You said, "I have a hard time calling her Miss Alene. To me, she was always Miss McDaniel because I've known her literally my whole life."
Absolutely.
So anyway, but and Tony, he was an athlete too.
Yes.
Tony played.
Yeah, he played football.
Played
in high school for Kingston. And actually, he reminds me of it every time. We'll probably get together tonight to go to the game. He reminds me that he was on the state championship team. We got beat in the finals my senior year. We were runner up. So he reminds me of that every time we get together.
Was that 73?
Yeah,
that was 73, of course.
I was on the championship winning team.
The winning team.
We weren't runner up. We won. So I get reminded of that but they were. There was a great team that year too, and he was very fortunate to get to play with that bunch.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your high school experience. You talked a little bit about some of the teachers that had an impact, and that you did well in the English department. And I want to talk about your academics, and I want to talk about your athletics a little bit as well. So, who are some of the other teachers that maybe in high school that kind of helped you form who you were going to become?
Some of the other
I know
ones,
the coaches would.
Right. There were coaches involved with that. Certainly,
but academically,
and academically,
because let's just face it, you're not a dumb football player. Okay, you're a pretty smart fella. So you had to have some. You had to have some academic.
I did. I had
prowess.
a great. Cherokee Elementary for one was very solid and sound. Yeah. I was well prepared when I got to, and in middle school the same with Miss Hobgood and the teachers I had then. Miss O'Neill was one of my English teachers that was fantastic, and Miss Wassam, and so that was those two were good, and then Miss Harris.
Miss Harris.
In algebra.
Yep.
You got to love zero.
Oh, yeah.
Love zero. And she helped me tremendously with that. And so in all those areas, and Miss Quimby. Miss Quimby was a biology teacher and did an excellent job with us and was very interested in every student. There are many. Miss Welch was another one of my math teachers that was fantastic. So those folks, along with, of course, Jess Clemens was the guidance counselor at the time and the football coach. And he took the guidance counseling job very seriously too. His mindset was to get kids ready and prepared for those who were wanting to go to college or career, either one. And he made sure that we were evaluated and determined what skills we had and what might be inclinations where we'd want to go. You know, of course, at that time I could just see far enough into the future to see college.
Yeah, sure.
And playing ball, but I did really have an appreciation for the academics.
Right.
There was a group of us, and that's another thing, because there were so many kids coming through the same time.
Yeah.
We were kind of in competition with each other academically.
Yeah.
And we would study together, study, for the tests together as a group of us. When you get a cohort like that is also cohesive, going together, and iron sharpens iron, and I was blessed with that. The student population as well as the faculty, what it amounts to is, if in your home, education is valued, and in the school, excellence is valued. I noticed a thing up in the office when I was down there waiting for you to come to get me this morning that mentioned the excellence and respect and communication, I think, on the wall there in the office. That's paramount.
Yeah.
It's caught as much as it is taught. And that was here then. The band was excellent then, Mr. Ross, and it's always been excellent. It still is.
Yeah.
Athletic programs. Excellence is something you can't turn on and off.
Yeah.
It goes with you everywhere. If whatever you're involved in, if you get excellence in athletics, you're going to get it in other things most of the time. And our band was excellent, and I always valued, when I was principal here, to have a very good band program. We did. Zach Williamson was here, the time that I was the principal, and he carried on that tradition and he built on it. And so then you have a bunch of students that it's demanded, excellence is demanded, and it becomes a habit, and you catch it. So everything you go to then, that's usually what you bring to the table is excellence.
What do you attribute that to? I mean, do you attribute it to being the small town culture, the family, all those things?
I do. I think it involves all those, because the teachers have to shop at the same grocery stores, the same. You run into everybody in the community, and everybody knows each other, and it's not just a faceless person when you're thinking about your students and the parents. They're people and interact with on a community level, because you have that small community, and everything you decide to do is going to have that impact on those people and their faces too. That was the biggest thing when I was the principal here, that I had to pray a lot about it to be sure that I didn't, because you're dealing with large numbers. I think it was 865 kids here when I was principal, and at the largest that it got. And soon you're trying to figure out, all right, how many sections of this do we need, how many of this, and getting things to fit. And then you say, wait a minute. These are not widgets.
Right.
These are children. These are somebody's prized possession. And I would actually pray, Lord, give me a genuine love and concern for these students. Some I don't even know well enough yet, but I did get to know them and their parents. But it's so easy to get worried about the X's and the O's, like the coach says, X's and O's instead of Tommy's and Joe's. And that was what we had then, to talking about excellence, because it's a people business. You can cut corners on facility if you need to. You can cut here, you can cut there, but you do not cut corners on people.
Right.
I look at education as a bunch of triangles. A school is a bunch of triangles. You got the student, the parent, and the teacher. And whatever you do to impact either one of those points on that triangle, it affects the whole triangle. And then the triangles are connected to other triangles, and you see, and it comes from that. And I think there was just that personalized aspect of genuine concern and well-being. And then, of course, success breeds success. And we had a lot of people that valued education highly, that were brought here, jobs at the lab at Oak Ridge, and the jobs at TVA we had that required a certain level of that already. So a lot of the students that come in had gotten a dose of that from their parents, and then that carried over. And so it just, excellence begets excellence.
Well, that's kind of like the reason that Oak Ridge is historically, always been one of the top schools in the state, because they have a community full of people, parents who believe that education is a priority. A good education is a priority.
Exactly.
So anyway, well, let's talk about Jess Flemings and the other coaches and how they impacted you?
Of course, now Jess was the head coach at the time, and Sam Porter was the offensive coach, and Gary Collins was the defensive coach.
Yeah.
So, and we had Coach Dunaway.
Yep.
And he worked here, and they all had an impact on me in a lot of ways. Like I said with Jess, looking at my career after high school and going to college and looking at the opportunities that were available. I was fortunate because of his impact with respect to the academics and reinforcing all those teachers that I had, that I had an appointment to go to the Naval Academy to play ball there. I got recruited to play football there, and it got to Congressman Joe L. Evans at the time. I never will forget getting the letter saying that I had been selected and could be, eligible to go, and really thought about it till I read the book on the plebe year, the first year.
Okay.
And you don't even, back then, I think it's changed some now, but then you never even come home for Christmas.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I was reading that, and I said, it would be an honor to play ball for the Naval Academy, but I don't know about not seeing Kingston for a whole year with my family.
I understand.
So, and there were several other universities that were interested, but the one I really wanted to play at, Vic King will get upset with me for this. I wanted to play at UT.
Yeah.
And, you grow up in the shadow of the stadium.
Oh, sure, of course.
And I wanted to, and they recruited me all year, and I was all fired up. And then, of course, you all of a sudden the letters stopped.
Oh, yeah.
And probably, I'm sure they picked a guy they thought was better, and it may very well have been better.
Sure.
But that was kind of a heartbreaker. But I have to say the University of Kentucky was very, very good to me. I had a lot of friends there, and it was a most of it for the most part was a good experience.
Yeah.
Of course, playing football for Jess, it was that personal interaction, and it was about the love of the game and the love of Kingston and the community. In college, it's more business.
Yeah. Oh,
and even then, back in the 70s, it was a business then, and that was a kind of a culture shock for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't that there were terrible. I had great coaches, a great linebacker coach, Bill Narduzzi, whose son, Pat Narduzzi, is the head coach of Pittsburgh now. He was a toddler when I was when I was at UK. But there's the difference is there's a lot of money involved in college ball. And it's more and more now, and I'm kind of worried about it now.
Yeah.
Actually, the NIL, and I know there are a lot of the kids deserve some kind of part of that, but I would think maybe it might be better if it was in a trust or something that they got afterwards. But anyway, that's another story. But Jess helped me in all of those areas there, and made sure that every school that was looking for a player knew. He made sure that my name was in the mix, and that helped a lot. And then Sim, being the principal, my senior year, I worked in the office.
Oh, did you?
I had a period that I was in the office. They always used us, and I would go by and collect the attendance slips off the nail of the door and come down and fill out the chart. Then you wouldn't have the computers like we got now. So I had a buddy of mine. He probably wouldn't mind at all. I mentioned his name, Charles Stanley.
Right.
And Charles, he came to me one day. He said, "You pick up during a fourth period?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm the one that gets the absentee slips." He said, "Well, if you see my name on Miss Quimby's list, just somehow don't get it on the chart.
Ignore it."
Yes. So
fun.
I did once, and it worked fine, And then he started getting more frequent.
Sure.
Well, Miss Quimby had come down to see him and said, "What's the matter with Charles Stanley? Is he terribly ill? Has he got something going on?" And he said, of course, Charles, he played ball with me too. And said, "Well, no, he's in practice every day." She said, Well, they put two and two together.
Yeah.
And I was standing there one day in that fourth period marking those things. And Sim comes up behind me, kicks me right in the tail end, but about halfway over the desk, the desk, the reception desk. And and he said, "I expect you to put every name that appears on any slip where it's supposed to be. This is much more important than blocking the right person from tight end or running the route or anything else. You better be doing that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I told Charles that the party was over. There'll be no more cutting Miss Quimby's class.
Wow. Wow. Let me ask you a question about, you were in high school in the early 70s. Mm-hmm. Okay. Late 60s, early 70s. That was kind of the hippie days, the drug culture. Mm-hmm. What was that like in Kingston? I'm sure there was some of it, but maybe it wasn't as bad as some other places. What was your opinion?
It was still relatively novel.
Yeah.
When I was a student here.
Yeah.
And there were some. I don't think I ever laid eyes on marijuana until I was like a senior or beyond. Mm-hmm. And it was just this one kid that we knew. Yeah. And he had a little. I think it was an empty Excedrin bottle, and he had it full. And of course, it just looked like kind of dirt and weeds.
Yeah, sure.
It was all round up, ready for smoking. Yeah, it did.
Oregano.
And then I don't remember as a student ever, smelling the fragrance of that, but it was shortly coming thereafter, as you probably know. We were. Kind of sheltered from it a little bit, but there was that going on, and then of course, and the influence of the music, sure. And of course the big thing was still at that time the big thing for the kids was alcohol, was beer, and I know even the band at that time. Of course, I don't think we realized the magnitude of the potential danger for that, because it was during that time that they changed the drinking age to 18.
Yes.
They said, we're sending them over to Vietnam to get killed. They should at least be able to
have
be
a drink.
and vote.
Yeah.
And so they put that in. Might not have been the best thing for high school seniors.
Sure.
And some of the things that we got into at the time. But I remember the band, even there was a song then that Budweiser had on their commercials when they had their Clydesdales and pulling the wagon and that beat, and our band would play that.
Is that right?
At ball games sometimes during time, and not making the connection that this was a terrible or could be have disastrous results. But that was the beer companies started marketing that 18-year-old group because they knew, and so things were made around that, and it.
So when you're in high school, drinking was a lot more prevalent than drugs.
Exactly. If kids did anything, that was probably what it was.
Yeah.
And there were a few, and then of course it got worse as years went on.
Oh, sure. So what did you major in college?
I majored in the major that I had was health and PE.
Oh, did you?
And I had a minor in biology because they kind of folded into each other. And so because I was going to coach. Yeah. That's what I planned to do.
That's what you wanted to do, coach.
And of course I did a few years when I first got out. But that's what I majored in, but became fascinated with it, probably not for the right reason, with the kinesiology and the physiology of exercise, that the biological aspects of it, to find out where I could get the best edge for training physically, and understand all that, how the body works, and the different the metabolism behind the Krebs cycle, and getting the maximum energy production as well as maximum build of muscle and body angles and those kinds of things that you need to play. And so I kind of got interested in that. So when I graduated with a teaching certification, majored in health and PE and biology, the first thing I taught the first few years at Cherokee as a teacher was science.
So did you come back straight after college
after I graduated?
Taught at Cherokee.
When I graduated and applied for a job at Cherokee and got the job, and I coached at the high school. Assistant. Okay. I was an assistant coach. Assistant coach with Coach Collins was still coaching then, and Jim Gibson had come back to Kingston. Jess had retired, and Jim came to Kingston as far as coaching was concerned. Jess had retired. And I came here, and he was the head coach, and I was one of the assistants. I had played linebacker at UK, so I was assisted on the defensive coach, and Gary was the defensive coordinator. Coached there, but taught the first year earth science. And I'd had, you have to have, because there's a relation really with biology and fossils and all those kinds of things and minerals. So I taught the earth science first year, and then moved to 7th grade, which was biology, life science. And of course, I think Miss Quimby also had an impact on me choosing biology. I really enjoyed her class, and she did such a good job of explaining things. So that's what I majored in, but the thing that I ran into that I noticed, and it was some of the things maybe that were changing a little bit at the time I was teaching, I was surprised when I would give a written assignment in health instead of just multiple choice things in the health classes, asking for maybe an explanation of how, simple explanations of things that a 7th grader would know, or in the biology classes. The grammar and lack thereof, and communication skills, and I was appalled at it. So I started doing more and more assignments that had where you had to communicate full sentences and things. And I'd even go, by then Miss O'Neill was teaching at Cherokee, and I would go to her and say, now what I need to stress for these kids here, I said, I can, I see several things. How do you get them to get this part right? I had just, like I said, caught a lot of it from teachers like her. And so I became very interested in the fact that, gosh, we got kids
that can't write,
that are brilliant, that are smart, but they can't communicate. They can't write.
Well, and now
beginning, middle, and end.
Absolutely.
And so that put a little fire in me for when I had the opportunity to go into administration and being a principal at Cherokee. It's one thing we really stressed, and even in high school we implemented writing across the curriculum. Where you go to a chemistry class and you write out why this formula works. These are the steps you take.
Even in what I teach in AB, they're surprised at how much writing I make them do.
Yes.
Because I tell them, I said, listen, these are the 3 things. If you can learn to master these, I said, you need to be able to speak well, write well, and problem solve.
Yes.
If you can do those things, there's no limit to what you can accomplish.
Exactly.
And so, they do a lot of research and writing in my, and I say, hey, listen, it's only 1,200 words. That's nothing. You ought to be able to do that in one period. You know? And they're like, what? So, but anyway, so you taught it. How long did you teach at Cherokee?
I taught there 7 years.
Okay.
And then actually 7.5, because I switched from that to the principal.
Oh, okay.
In the middle of the year after about 7, at the start of my 8th year, I switched and was principal at Cherokee for 5 years.
Oh, were you? Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, did you have to go back and get like a further degree, or had you done that?
By then I'd already gotten my master's and then finished my EDS when I was working as principal. Finished my EDS and had that too. And those classes, some of them are, take them or leave them. But there were some of the professors that I had. I did it through Tennessee Tech. Got my other degrees through Tennessee Tech, and I kept. I was really concerned about administrative strategies and process, the scope and sequence of curriculum and all those things, because I wanted to be sure that, just what you said, they were equipped with being able to communicate orally and in writing very well, and because you can get the wrong impression of someone if they can't do that. They may be very intelligent.
That's exactly right.
But the communication was such a thing with me then, and then I was fortunate to have a lot of good teachers. And there was a good principal at Cherokee before Jim Lett was the principal there. But when I worked under him as a teacher, I learned a lot from him too. And so it was a pretty good school already, and it was a great place to start.
And it was still elementary school.
Oh, no, it was middle school.
Middle school by then. Okay.
It was a middle school. That's right. And 6, 7, and 8.
That's right.
And had some great teachers working for me there. Miss Moore and Miss O'Neill was there, and there's a whole list of them. I'll leave somebody out if I start naming them all. But that was a great staff at Cherokee already there. And
so you were there about a dozen years, both as a teacher and
12 and a half.
12 and a half years.
Yeah.
And then after Cherokee, where did you go?
I came to Roane County High.
Did you?
The principal in 1990.
Okay.
Started the fall of 1990 here as principal.
Okay.
Replaced Sim. Sim had retired.
Right.
And took that position.
Yeah.
In 1990.
And how long were you principal here?
15 years.
Is that right?
Yes.
My goodness.
I remember I was speaking at an event at the church one time, and I don't know if you know Gary Alley, but he helps with did the robotics here for years.
Yeah.
Just a great guy. He had spoken before me, and I said, now, when Gary makes a presentation, he's an engineer, so he's got an engineer mind, and he thinks, and it's very well planned and laid out and orderly. And I said, now, so that's what you get from an engineer. And that's the way his brain works.
Yeah.
I'm just warning you, I was a high school principal for 15 years, and I have no brain. It's gone.
Yeah, I'm sure. Was that the hardest job you've ever had, being a high school principal?
Yes. I remember one time when I was working at the central office, Tony Clower and Russell Jenkins and some more were taking teachers from the system, trying to get a crop of good candidates for principal positions, administrative positions, and being a principal of school that never had been, and they were getting them prepared or trying to have a cadre of individuals they could go to when they needed a position filled. And so they wanted me to talk to them one day, just tell them, just a brief statement. I said, by that time I had already had a kidney transplant. My kidneys, I had an inherited disease. My father had it, and so I had to have my kidneys quit. Probably high school principal probably didn't help that.
Yeah, probably so.
But anyway, I was on dialysis for a while, and then got a transplant. That was a miraculous thing that happened with that, and too much to go into right now. But anyway, I went into the guys and the ladies that were thinking about being principals, and I said, let me tell you about principal. I said, I played college football at a Division I school, and I was probably a little above average maybe as an athlete, but not near the caliber of some of the ones I played with and practiced with. Yeah. And it was rough, and it took some, it's a different ball game than high school.
Oh yeah.
And I said, I've been on dialysis, and I've gone through kidney failure. Nothing comes close. None of that comes close to being a high school principal or a principal. Yeah. I'm just telling you, it's 24/7.
Oh yeah.
And especially if you love it.
Yeah.
If you love it, the more you love it,
the more you're invested.
Yes.
And so I guess it's all consuming, isn't it?
It is. And we had an excellent staff when I was here. Yeah. Teacher wise, still had a good, strong English department. Mike Suits, Dr. Van Landingham. Yeah. And Ms. Watson was still
of course.
Was here. So they did a great job, and then the others. When we were coming over here, we ran into Mr. Smith. And he was one of our math teachers. Great job. Then that was an example of some of the ones we just had a great staff. Yeah. But it's still a very extremely demanding job. Yeah. Some people say that really what is listed under is impossible to do. Sure. And it really is, unless you have people around you. Right. And the parents and this community when I was principal, was still very in the 90s. They were fantastic.
The parents were involved in their kids' lives.
We had a little group.
Unlike today.
Yeah,
to be quite honest.
I'll tell you,
and for the most, I mean, not for the most part, but yeah, it's changed.
I can say it now because I'm not under any legal obligations. Right. I don't think, but I had a little prayer group that I prayed with.
Yeah.
Miss Watson was one of them. Miss Tilly.
Yeah.
And Donna Collins, Miss Collins, and the four of us, we'd had a little, prayer pact, and I would sometimes write out a prayer for us to pray during the week.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get together, but sometimes it was just let's agree on this. Let's pray on this together. And I remember one time telling them that the prayer that I put together was that the students would love each other. The teachers would love each other.
Yeah.
And that the teachers would love the students and the students would love the teachers.
Right.
And because you look at it, even in as fortunate as we were in the community we were in, that was one of the big things that I knew was there when we went through school.
Yeah.
And those kinds of things that was positive. So we started praying that. And God started working.
Is that right?
I remember standing in the hall there one day of that year. That was probably 96 or 97. In 1998, Roane County High School was at the pinnacle of what I had envisioned when I started in 1990 as the principal.
Right.
And we did a lot of great things. Like I said, a great staff, and we had teachers that came up with great ideas. But it was just a richness in the student body. And I was talking to in athletics. Yeah. The band went to what would be considered like a state championship.
Right.
They went to Tennessee Music Education Association, played that place. That was an honor.
Yeah.
And the football team made it to the finals in the state. Right. All the baseball, softball were all in the tournaments to the state. And then our academics, we were winning the award every year for gains, gains on the scores and those kinds of things. And I was talking to one of the teachers there, standing by, and he was really a great guy. He was, but I guess he would be considered an agnostic, but tremendous person. Yeah, and loved the students and loved his job. And he's telling me, he says, we were talking about these kids, these seniors in 98, and the ones coming up are like, he said, all the years I've taught, I've never noticed such a genuine concern for each other. They are together. And I thought, that's the answer to that.
That's the answer to that prayer.
Yeah. So that was
all right. So while you were principal here, I want you to tell this story, you became world famous. Didn't you?
Yes.
What year was that? And tell me about the speech you gave at the football game.
Okay. Yeah.
And how did that come about, and what resulted as part of that?
I got a letter that summer working. We're concentrating in the school, in the trenches. Keeping kids off drugs, keeping them from
having babies,
and those things, and keeping those away from them. And I get this thing from the ACLU saying, and they were all excited about it. Hey, we can come and help you with this new court ruling that has said that you can't pray before a ball game, can't have anybody doing that, before the games. And so,
what year was that? Do you remember?
That was in 2000.
Okay.
2000.
Okay. All right.
That summer.
Yeah.
And so it just ran all over me.
Oh yeah.
And I'm trying to keep them off this stuff, and you're wanting me to keep them away from the microphone.
Right.
For a minute. It's more important than all these other issues that kids are dealing with. So I was infuriated. But I started praying about it, and I started, what am I going to do when the season rolls around? What am I going to do in my position and in my profession of faith?
Right.
And because I was angry, the first 15 to 20 drafts hit the trash can.
Right.
Because I would start writing, and I did a lot of praying along this dike.
Oh, I'm sure.
This is a beautiful thing, Kingston, to have that walkway. That was a wonderful thing. But I did a lot of praying along it when I would do my exercise in the afternoon, my jogging or walking. And every time the Lord would say, "Now, why are you saying this particular phrase?" Well, they need to hear it. He said, "No, you need them to hear it. That's not what you want." So I'd X that out.
Right.
And I'd go along, and I'd get another little bit later, and it's the same thing would come up. Why are you really saying that? What difference is that going to make? Or is it just going to alienate more than you know?
Right.
So I'd mark that out. So I don't know how many rough drafts I went over in my head, plus the ones that I had on paper and prayed about it all along. And in essence, if you've just seen the speech, in essence, is saying there's a rule. I hate the rule, but I have an obligation to abide by it.
Yeah.
And just like when kids come to me and I'd say this is a rule, and they say, "Well, that's a stupid rule," and I said, "Well, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're going to go with it,
right?
Or there'll be consequences."
Sure.
And so, how could I say that to a student, then turn around and blatantly say we're going to break this law?
Right.
That's how that came about, along with a lot of prayer and concern. And I really didn't know for sure what might happen. As far as my position, but I got to a point where God, this is in your hands.
You didn't care. Right. At that point, you was like, whatever happens, happens.
Exactly. It was like
I got to sleep at night.
Yes, and I got to that point with it, and you know what? That's really liberating.
Oh yeah.
It gives you a different perspective on things when you know that we believe what we say we believe, that God is sovereign.
Sure.
And so we went with that, and I remember the night I read it. I had it on just on a I had written on a, and at 3:00 that afternoon, I had Donna Collins come into my office. And she was my assistant then. I said, "Donna, I'm thinking about reading this tonight. You know, we're not going to do prayer, but I want them to know why, where I'm coming from on it. I'm going to follow the law." And I said, "Read this." And I said, I'm getting a strong, this is at 3 on that Friday.
On that
whether or not I still wasn't.
Hadn't decided.
For sure. Right. And I'd been praying about it, and I had her come in. I said, "Read this. I'm thinking about announcing this today. I think God is telling me to do this." And she read it and looked up. "You say God's telling you to do this?" Because Gary her husband was the superintendent then. And he was going to have to deal with that.
Right. That's what I was about to ask anyway.
And so she read it, and she said, "And you say God's telling you to do this?" I said, "Yes." She said, "You better do it." So I don't know if I'd have done it if she hadn't.
Right.
You know, but then that was, you know, God does that. He'll give you affirmation from individuals to let you know you got to go ahead with something if you're on it. And so I did, and then, like they say, the rest is history. That was my first encounter with the World Wide Web.
Right.
Really, it would, 10 years before then, it would have gotten around, I'm sure. But the speed that it got around all over the whole world. Never thought that was even in the works for any of that.
Right.
And it just took off. And because I remember walking out, somebody said, "Have you got a copy of that here?" I said, I had it. I think I still had it on my computer. But I didn't think much of it. Gave it to them, and whoever that was, really, I think
they were the one that spread got it
started, and then it just metastasized from there, and it went all over the world.
So what was the what was the reaction? I'm sure you had both sides.
Yes.
Okay.
There was both sides. Fortunately, of course, a lot of the ones that probably didn't like it they didn't care about one way or the other.
Right.
We're not going to take the time to write or send a card or anything else.
Sure.
There was a group that and it was not the largest by far. There was a group that was really upset by it.
Yeah.
And they would send, it was vitriolic. It was, they know where I live.
Oh, yeah. It was ugly, wasn't it?
I hadn't even thought about that, being that big a deal. Sure. And then there was a whole lot of people from all over the world. Mm-hmm. I got letters from every state in the country. Mm-hmm. Germany, Canada,
wow.
New Zealand, France. Uh-huh. Now, some of those were military guys stationed in those places, but from just all over the world.
Yeah.
And most of them, by far, most of them saying, appreciate you doing what you did.
Right.
And then, of course, Zach Wamp was a congressman at that time. And he actually read it on the floor of Congress.
Did he really?
Yeah, he read it, and it's in the United States Congressional Record of the speech, and dedicated. They flew the flag over the Capitol building for a day for me, and he came here and presented me with the flag and a plaque that said, had some words on it, that was in October, I believe. I believe October 19th or 20th was the day that it flew in that flag flew over and he read that on the floor of Congress. It was part of his. It was about something that else too, but it fit right in with what he was wanting to have said, or to let people see. There are a lot of people that think like this,
right?
The same way, and so from that standpoint, it was a blessing. I've got all those, because you remember in Elijah, after he had his showdown with the prophets of Baal and had wiped them out, and then he got a note from the queen at the time, Jezebel, sent him, said what happened. He killed. They killed all the prophets of Baal there, and the note to him said, "What happened to these will happen to you. I'm going to see to it." Well, he went straight from victory there to running. Sure. And depression and everything else. But because he thought he was the only one. When God came to him, he said, "Well, what are you doing hiding out here in the cave?" He said, "I'm the only one left. Only one of your followers left." He said, "Oh, no." Yeah. And when I got all those letters from all over the world, I said,
you didn't feel alone.
No, I didn't feel, and I didn't feel like, the world's, there was still a lot of people following the Lord. Yeah. Many much stronger in their faith than me. Yeah. And so I felt good about the whole condition of our country and those things. But now that's been 24 years ago. Yeah. Yeah. So,
but 24 years ago, and people still ask, like me, asked about it. Yeah. Because, of all the things that you've done some, great things in your life, but that's going to be a part of your legacy. That's going to be one of the things that you're remembered for. Right, yeah. Really. Yeah. So, and what better thing can you be remembered for than something like that?
That's the way it is with God. He always brings more and better than what you expect.
So when you left here as principal, what did you do? Did you go to the central office then at that point? Yes. And what did you do there?
At central office, I worked. I was attendance supervisor. Okay, all right. Worked with that and HR, and helped implement at the time school-wide positive behavior support. Okay. I don't know if you've heard about it or familiar with it, but it's based on acknowledgement of students demonstrating what they have been instructed with respect to behavior. Okay. You treat behavior like another subject, like you would teach math or science or anything else. You teach them, especially in elementary and middle, but it also works in high schools. Right. You give them 3 simple rules. Sure. Be ready, be responsible, be respectful. Yeah. And then you show them what being ready looks like in the classroom. Yeah. What it looks like in the cafeteria, what it looks like on the playground, or in the hallways, and the same thing with each one of the 3 rules: responsible, respect. So you really you make a common language is what you do. Yeah. Because if you have a common language, you can influence a culture one way or the other. And so that's where it comes from. But it's acknowledgement not uniform every time, but just when somebody sees you manifesting one of the behaviors that you were taught about that,
right.
Instead of just saying, "Oh, you're a good little girl," or "You're a good boy," you say, "That was being respectful when you did that. That
sure.
was being responsible when you did that."
Oh, well, good.
And you speak the language, and those words ring with them. But some kids that you think would care less about what a teacher or a person in authority thinks of them, anytime somebody of that stature, a teacher or whatever else, you're validating that very person,
right,
for doing something that simple,
right.
And it's not every time. It's kind of like fishing. One thing, you keep going fishing, you catch that 5-pounder, and you keep going and going and going for the hopes of doing that again. Yeah. That's what, if you did it every time, you get tired of catching 5 pounders. So if you reward every time they do something right. But the fact that it's sporadic and random has a lot of power and influence. Everybody likes to be validated.
Well, let's kind of wrap things up here, because my bell's going to ring here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
And so you retired from the school system just a couple of years ago, I guess.
It's been the three years.
And you are now doing some volunteer work. Educational programs.
I started out working a couple of years for creating a Legacy Christian Academy, a Christian school that we hope will bring support and students from all over this area, not just Roane County, but neighboring citizens. Where the campus is located, the school is located on the campus of the Grove Church, and they've been very gracious to allow us to use their facility to get the school going. They embraced the notion of having a private Christian school. A lot of people say it's a good idea, and they would allow it at places, but it's different when you embrace it like they have. It's been fantastic, and that's been key to us being able to get to where we are now. But yes, I've been doing that since I retired.
Since you retired,
and I worked for First Baptist, as the administrator there from 2016, while I was still working with the school system some, 2016 to just a couple of years ago. But when I took on this school, it was a little bit bigger. So I'm the director of that right now. But yes, I'm like the old preacher said that was in his 80s, and I asked him, said, "When are you going to retire?" And he said, "I've read the Bible 2 or 3 times. Doesn't say anything about retiring. It just says, and he died." Yeah. So, right now, God grants me the good health. I'm going to go as long as I can, doing something.
I understand. So, just one last thing. Have you ever thought about leaving Kingston since you came back after college?
No, never. I was wanting to come back while I was gone when I was in school.
When you were in school.
I love this place. I love Kingston. I love the people of Kingston. I'm sure other communities have the same. And their people feel just as rich. But this is a diamond in the rough. And as I look back, I thank God that I got to grow up in Kingston, Tennessee. I love this place, and I love the people of this place. And it's been tremendously much better to me than I have to it. And I'm just very thankful for that.
All right. Well, Jody, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.